All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. And this video is long overdue. Actually, this is kind of, I guess you could consider this a part two to a video I did years ago when Star Wars Rogue One first came out. And I even then said that against the better judgment of many critics, that Star Wars Rogue One was the best Star Wars movie ever done. And people couldn't believe it, especially at that time, because I think they were expecting that the Star Wars franchise was going to just produce bangers and just knock out more and more great work. And it's been kind of the opposite of that in the franchise for many reasons. But specifically, I want to focus on why Star Wars Rogue One in this kind of part two video is the best Star Wars on the list, right? Now, years later, I was somewhat vindicated because they came out with Andor, right? Based on Cassian Andor, the main one of the main characters in Star Wars Rogue One, and many people start to talk about how as a series, Andor was one of the best Star Wars series to come out. And I found that interesting that they thought Andor was one of the best Star Wars series to come out, but they didn't think Rogue One was one of the best Star Wars. Some people would say, oh, it was an incomplete movie. It was missing something, right? So let's talk today about why Star Wars Rogue One was the best Star Wars, and I'm going to give some reasons why that is, and why this was the best Star Wars movie I've ever seen. You know, it used to be Empire Strikes Back, but I think in some ways this might be better than Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, and so we'll discuss it. So let's start. Let's kind of jump to the difference in this type of Star Wars movie and what we got with many of the George Lucas earlier films, etc., and even these new franchise films with Miss Kennedy. So the first part is we need to focus on the director. I believe his name is Garrett Edwards, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's his name. I recently saw his latest movie called The Creator. Now, Garrett Edwards, you can kind of see the style of what he did with Roy. He just has a great film cinematography style, number one. But what it is about this Star Wars, of course, me, you know, watching Star Wars as a kid, becoming an adult. Well, first, obviously, first it's a Star Wars for adults, and because Star Wars came out in the late '70s, many of these Star Wars fans are actually pretty old, right? And so, one of my reasons for saying it's the best Star Wars is the first gritty Star Wars movie we ever got in the Star Wars universe, right? And today with sophisticated filming and subject matter, um, that goes a long way. George Lucas, to his credit, and which I don't blame him, I would have done the same thing. Had this genius plan at the time that was revolutionary. That when he created Star Wars, uh, unlike just being a filmmaker who's gonna make money off of box office tickets and make money off of the profits and such from the movie, he figured out how to get all the rights to the characters and the in the toy lines and such, and that's something that wasn't as popular then as it is today. And he made a fortune off of that. Unfortunately, that became the model for every Star Wars film. So everybody wants to create a toy, and everybody wants to, have these Muppets and puppets and such from that George Lucas era. And again, I don't blame them. I understand it, but it was just so refreshing, especially for older Star Wars fan, to see a gritty Star Wars in a universe where we can take people as serious as Darth Vader serious, right? But I also, it's not that I have a problem with that. You can have the Muppets and the puppets and stuff in there. It's not that I have a problem with that, even as an older person. but it's just that sometimes I don't think it works. It can take you out of the film. And this is such a sophisticated, well done, beautifully shot film that it just did everything right in this universe. Now, there were uh, some negatives, right? There were some things that I could see maybe where some people were coming from that I felt could easily have been fixed in the film, right? Because it's not a perfect film, but it's to me the best Star Wars film, right? Just like Andor is the best Star Wars series, and that being that, um, the length of the film, I think there were some of the stuff could have been cut out of film, right? Probably that's what it is. I think when your film runs too long and you kind of get lost in where your story's going, or maybe it's a little bit too much filler, maybe that just means you need to cut the film down. Right now, of course, a lot of people complain, hey, then that means it's an incomplete film, and that's a lot of what they got, that it just wasn't. But I think it was. I think the story could have been told a little shorter. Absolutely, there were some things that could have been told a little bit shorter to not push us through that. And I think we could have got enough time and understanding of these characters to get enough of it right in the development. I thought the development was fair, right? The character development, right? Of course, these people weren't going to matter in the future of Star Wars very much for us to, know a whole great deal about them. But we got the story of how the plan of the Death Star were obtained to find these vulnerabilities in the Death Star, right? And so I appreciated that. Um, Now, of course, you can say that many of these characters were greatly underdeveloped. Anytime you have this many characters on screen, I don't think they're meant to be developed. I think we got enough of Andor, Cassian Andor, the type of person he was, and Jane Orso. I think we got a great deal of her, right? Of course, it was her story. Um, but yeah, this was just a very adult base, and let's face it, like uh, when you're doing kind of the Muppet Puppet childlike Star Wars versions, the Jar Jar Binks, as it were. And I'm not you know harping on Jar Jar Binks. He redeemed himself, the character who plays him, a great deal in the Mandalorian series, right? I'm more so focused on the again the puppets and the Muppets. It's just very hard